My sister was getting seizures after every 20 minutes.
Oh, she was in school at that time?
No. If somebody is falling down after every 20 minutes and every other time she's from a seizure, and by the time she's composed enough, 20 minutes later, she falls again.
Oof. Did you listen to the Hot Breakfast this morning? Here's what you missed. A story a day.
And I just had to Google this word just to make sure that I, would know what we're talking about. Epilepsy, right? Epilepsy is a neurological disorder marked by sudden recurrent episodes of sensory disturbance, loss of consciousness, or convulsions associated with abnormal electrical activity in the brain. And you've seen people suddenly fall down and start shaking, writhing in pain, or they look like, pretty uncontrollable, right?
Yes.
So our guest today, his sister is epileptic.
Okay.
And he decided, because a lot of people aren't aware, you can see someone doing that and you just walk by, right?
Yeah.
Because you're worried, you're scared, you don't know what to do.
In fact, like even in schools, the teachers will start saying all kinds of weird things.
Yeah, and they say, oh, they're going to swallow their tongue, something like that, put something in their mouth because they're going to swallow their tongue.
Or they've been possessed.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So there's a lack of awareness about epilepsy. So our guest today decided, you know what? I'm going to start raising awareness. So he first walked. Are you listening? Walked from Nairobi to Mombasa.
That's a total distance of how long?
480. And it took him more than like a dozen days.
You said 482 kilometers.
Good Lord.
The way Jeff here walks these 107 steps to the top of the Nene, and it's like an achievement.
107 steps.
I did it, Nick.
Frederick Beuchi joins us live in the studios. Actually, a theologist. He started theology, so he's still aspiring to be a pastor, Frederick, one of these days.
All right.
And that walk to Mombasa wasn't the only thing. He also rode his bicycle to Arusha.
Wow. How long did that take you?
In 4 days.
Good Lord. And then climbed Mount Kilimanjaro after that.
Rested for 2 days and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
Hey, Ndugu.
My friend.
Jeff, are you hearing what people are achieving? They climbed the whole mountain. 5 flights of stairs. You
and I'm calling
a plaque.
And I'm calling HR for human rights. What, Frederick?
Yeah.
Karibu sana. Welcome to Hard 96.
Asante. Thank you so much for having me.
So now these 4 days when you ride into Arusha, because me the other day I tried to ride a bike. Hey, after the first 100 meters, nikasema, achana nayo. So you ride for how long in the day?
Yeah.
The whole day, then you sleep the whole night? Or?
Yeah, actually, so what had to happen is we had to take time and practice. So practicing for Kilimanjaro, first the idea was I wanted to go climb Kilimanjaro. And I was like, okay, the idea is to create awareness. And I will not be the first one to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it was going to be more of, a normal thing happening. But what was going to draw attention to people was if you step up and you do something that is extraordinary. So I said, instead of taking a flight, landing in Arusha, and then preparing myself to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, taking the bus, I will cycle all the way to Arusha. So that one had meant that I start practicing to cover about 1,000, not 1,000, but 550 kilometers during my practice accumulatively, and then climb every mountain that is in the country here before I go to Kilimanjaro.
Oh, so you've been you've scaled all our mountains?
Yes, I've done Long Nod, Rimeria, Elephant Hill. All Ngong was like a walk, like you wake up and you just rush there before you.
Oh, it's a walk in the park for you. Jeff, are you listening to people's achievements?
What about Mount Kenya?
Yeah, no, I didn't do Mount Kenya, but the rest of the mountains around I did. So that took us about 7-8 months of practice before we took up the expedition.
And you did this during Corona?
Yes. So this is what happened. After I did the walk in 2018, it had a lot of reaction and people followed up the journey. Actually, the question was, why would somebody walk from Nairobi to Mombasa? ni fair hauna ama ni nini. You
I was
see?
thinking of walking to Kitengela to raise awareness on something, but now I think I'll change my strategy.
Yeah.
White angels.
You see, because I called my friends in 2018, and when I put the idea out, they were like, Fred, you know, epilepsy, as you've read there, it's something to do with the brain. So they were like, maybe we should check on your brain. We don't think you are straight and good enough.
Yeah.
I just asked them a question. What would you like to be paid if you're told to walk from Nairobi to Mombasa? And a friend of mine was like, unless they're making me the president of Kenya, I wouldn't do that. So already, to me, that meant, okay, so this is a huge and a big thing. If it was going to attract attention, then I'm definitely going for it. I didn't want my parents to know, actually. But the moment I made the announcement to friends, a friend of mine who is also a journalist picked it up. And 2 weeks before the walk, it was on the papers. So my mom got to see it on the papers. And now...
Someone, kijana yangu, ni kazi umekosa ama nini?
and she didn't call me. So she called a friend of mine who's now turned out to be our family doctor for my sister. He's called Dr. Eddie Chengo. He called Dr. Eddie and he says, I've read this part of a story in the newspaper. I'm seeing Frederick Beuchi. Is this my son? And Dr. Chengo is like, yes, he is. We are equally shocked, but we are calling him to talk with him about this whole thing because we've never heard about something like this. And so, yeah, people meet and I'm given an opportunity to share how prepared I am for that cause. And I say, yes, I'm prepared. And this is how I'm planning to do it. And they were convinced. And they say, okay, you have all our support.
It took you 12 days?
12 days.
How was the walk?
Sometimes when I now talk about it, it appears to be something that was so easy to do, but it was tough. Personally, I'd never done something like that before. It was my first expedition, and I was just being driven by the fact that I wanted epilepsy to come out of the shadows. So the first 5 days, I was doing 35 to 40 kilometers because I knew at the end of the day, days later, I was going to get weak, and that is exactly what happened. Blisters all over, slowed down by day 6. At some point, I had to rest for about 2 days before I could continue. I couldn't really walk properly.
You must have thought, am I crazy here? I mean, when I get to Hunter's Lodge, I'm already tired.
And that's driving.
This is driving.
And that's driving. Yeah. So it was difficult. It was hard. So.
And you get to Mtito day after how many days?
So by my 7th day, I was at Mtito day.
So where are you spending your nights? Oh, you've mapped it out in such a way.
So I've mapped it out, and every day as I walk, I would take a look at the next town. Of course, some of them wouldn't be really towns, but just, small shopping centers where you'll find a place and you get in and you sleep. The idea was, again, to meet people on the way, the border guys. You just get into a shopping center and you pull out your flyers and you call a crowd of people. You begin the conversation, and then people come, they share their experiences.
And you tell them about epilepsy.
And you tell them about epilepsy.
Were they listening? I mean, were they saying, who is this person?
They were actually listening. It was so interesting that at the end of the day, when you tell them, I'm on my way to Mombasa, so that really captures their attention. And they're like, okay, so you're from Nairobi. I'm saying, yeah. So they begin to look at you. They want to confirm if that is true, whatever you're trying to tell them. And you just prove it to them, because I was taking photos. There are friends who are following me on, social media. They were posting. They were trying to create the buzz even as I was walking. And so, people got so interested with the conversation and the fact that I was walking all the way. Yeah, so my sister, her name is Mercy, and she was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 2. How she ended up getting epilepsy is when she was born 2 weeks later, she suffered cerebral malaria. And so we treated cerebral malaria, but by the time, she was getting healed of cerebral malaria, it had already affected her brain. So 2 years later, then she begins to show signs of, epilepsy. It was a totally new thing to me and even to the family. The closest I had, come in terms with the epilepsy was from the Bible. I mean, I've watched the movie Jesus. At some point, he was called to, pray for a young boy who had epilepsy. And it says, Jesus' shadow was cast on this man, and the evil spirit of the epilepsy left this man. So from that point, so many people also get to understand that epilepsy is not a medical condition, but it's caused by demon possession. And that was my understanding too, until it happened to my sister. So in 2012, actually, I was working in a shipping agency company. I had to quit my job because my sister is growing and the condition is getting worse because we have not gotten an opportunity to get a specialist to begin the treatment journey.
Was it severe? Would she fall down?
It was severe because my sister was getting seizures after every 20 minutes.
Oh, she was in school at that time?
No, she couldn't go to school.
Homeschooling?
Homeschooling, not yet, because the condition again had kind of like interrupted everything. She cannot concentrate. If somebody is falling down after every 20 minutes and every other time she's from a seizure, she's a little bit confused. So she takes a little bit of time to compose herself. And by the time she's composed enough, 20 minutes later, she falls again. So every time she's up, my mom could not do anything. Because unless there's somebody to be just right by her side, she will always fall down, hit her head, have injuries all over.
Is it true you have to put something, open the mouth or put something in the mouth?
That is not supposed to happen. Actually, it's important you have mentioned that when you talk about first aid for epilepsy, there are 5 things that you're supposed to do and 3 that you're not supposed to do. If somebody has, had an attack and they're having that, the fits and convulsions, you first stay calm. You want to understand what has made them fall. Then the next thing you do in the environment where they have had the seizure, you remove any objects that would harm either their body or their head. If they have either fallen on, in water or on fire, you just get them out of that environment. Then look for something that is soft. Put it beneath their head. That is to protect the head from getting any more injuries. If they are in tight clothing, you also try to open up so that they get some good fresh air. Most of the time, a seizure will not last more than 2-3 minutes. So it will happen. It will reoccur in different episodes, but one episode will not last for like 5 minutes or the farthest it can go is around 5 minutes. So they will still come back to their senses again. So when they are coming back to their senses, then roll them in what we call the recovery position, whereby you lie them on their side. Some of them, when they're having a seizure, there's a kind of foam that comes out of their mouth. So if you lie them on their back, that they might just end up swallowing, the saliva and even get choked. So lying them on their back helps them to breathe as well, and on the side, as well as getting the saliva or the foam out. And then stay with them until, fully recovered and senses are back. These 3 things that people have been doing, and into the many communities that it has been the practice. When somebody gets a seizure, they put something in their mouth. The fear is that, they will bite their tongue. I've heard other people say they will swallow their tongue, but I've never had such an experience before. I think my sister has had the severe of all epilepsies, and she's never swallowed her tongue at any point when she was having a seizure. So, but the biting happens, but we can be able to treat if it's a wound that, it's through biting. When you put something inside their mouth, you see a convulsion or a seizure is happening because they don't have a complete circulation of oxygen to the brain, and they're using their nose, and at that point in time they need to use also their mouth to get a lot of oxygen for them to arrest the seizure. So if you put something in their mouth, it blocks the airway. Apart from just putting spoons or sticks, what people do, there are those that look for a cloth and they stuck it in there, and it's not something that is, it makes it even worse. So it's not supposed to happen. Do not restrain them when they are jerking. Do not restrain them, because at the end of the day, the jerking, all the shocks get into the muscles when you are restraining them, and by the time the seizure is over, they become very weak. They cannot even walk. So that's the only way a seizure can come out. Do not restrain them, and do not give them any drink or food when they're having that seizure. An active seizure, if I touch them, I will also have it. It never happens. It cannot be transferred from one person to another. The causes, of course, brain damage, which happens when somebody, say, gets an accident and they get a head injury that goes deeper into touching their brain. For children, birth complications. And this is where we advocate for mothers to give birth in hospitals as opposed to giving birth at home or traditional birth attendants. They put the mother on risk, and even the child, by the time they are born, the skull is very weak, and as you are being assisted, if there's a lot of pressure exerted on the child's head, it might also tamper with the brain.
So how old is your sister now?
14 years, and she has been seizure-free now for 5 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, because of medication or because of...
Yeah, it's totally because of medication. So, actually, her treatment journey began in 2013. I had to come all the way to Nairobi. The first epilepsy open day was happening at Uhuru Park. I wasn't so much used to Nairobi then, but I saw an interview on TV, and I told Mom, let me just go there. It's the first epilepsy open day happening in the country. I hope I will get to meet an expert who will advise. So I came all the way here. So many people there. I had to queue, wait, got to see the specialists. They're called epileptologists. And fortunately, there are only 2 in the country.
Wow.
What?
There are only 2 in the country, and one is a practicing meaning he sees patients with epilepsy. This other one is purely a researcher. See, so, but they are closely being assisted with neurologists, again, who are not so many in the country, about 30 to 35 of them.
Wow.
At the moment.
And part of the board, do we know how many plus minus Kenyans suffer from epilepsy? Do you know?
Yes, we do. At the moment, we are talking about 1.5 million people.
What?
Across the country?
Across the country, living with one or the other type of epilepsy.
Let me ask you, when I was in school as a kid, there used to be a guy who had epilepsy, and so he had some sort of protective gear. I'll call it a helmet for reference. But do you all get that for as head protective gear? Because, the injuries that can come from that.
Yeah, it's advisable. At some point, we also had to, buy our sister headgear. Because of the multiple injuries she was always getting every time she was having a seizure.
And she would wear it all day?
Yeah, it had to. Until at a point when she was in now getting the generalized seizures, where she has to fall down and hit her head, she would just get either a partial or an absent seizure where she doesn't necessarily fall down. So we had to take it off.
And this guy in school, was he okay in the end?
He passed on a few years later, maybe like when he was late teens.
Late
But I just saw it in the papers. But in school, in the middle of like assembly, just and it's down.
Yeah.
But the teachers had been told what to do, because I used to see them put him on the side.
Yeah. I mean, if I buy something new And I go home and I say, surprise, here's a new dress. She
gets
gets
seizure.
overexerted and she gets a seizure.
Because I've also seen like some
Yeah.
movies, they say the picture...
The flickering, of lights. Actually, it's what we call a photosensitive epilepsy. So even before a movie starts, they put a disclaimer and they say if somebody has
Flash photography.
exactly,
Yes.
it causes that.
Is that why they keep warning us?
Yes, they keep warning us because you never know who's
Yeah.
in the audience and who's watching that particular. So that helps.
When we were growing up, there was something called strobe lights in discos. Remember those strobe lights? Those
Yes.
ones, they must be
So
horrible.
somebody with epilepsy cannot be in such a space. They will immediately,
Get a seizure.
get a seizure. Yeah. So there are so many triggers. Change of weather. The other day,
So even maybe like a hooting of a truck passing can trigger...
yes,
Wow.
anything that can make a person with epilepsy adrenaline just rise
Rush,
up
yeah.
quickly, it can cause. So they are under medication, seizures are controlled, but you have these triggers that come on their way. And the issue here is not to increase medication. When they are able to know what their triggers are and they are able to arrest that, then they are good to go.
And what's the
the success-
medication?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the medication, it's, I would say it's a whole, it needs it needs a holistic approach. So you have this epileptologist who is a specialist who, when you go to them, they will hear you out, and they will recommend that they do a test. It's called EEG. But again, this test is not done to everybody. Sometimes even from your explanation and even from your medical history, they are able to tell what type of epilepsy you have. We have over 40 types of epilepsy. So not everyone who has epilepsy falls down and they're having a seizure. But they are grouped in 3 groups: the generalized one, partial, and the absent seizures. Yeah. So depending on what type of seizure somebody has, they will be prescribed what we call anti-epileptic drugs or medication that they will take for a period of time. It is also good to know that some types of epilepsy, at some point, people kind of like outgrow them, especially the absent seizure, which is common in children. You're talking to a child, or you're even sending them to, bring you something, like, John, go get me a cup. But before you mention a cup, they just hear go, because at some point they went blank, and then they bring you a plate. You see? So as a parent, you're thinking, every time I tell you things you don't understand, you see?
This is like a breakdown in communication.
Yes.
In your brain, from your mouth to your brain. Or from your ears.
Yes.
Wow.
And part of the awareness is also to help, teachers who are taking care or teaching children in nursery school, kindergarten, to help them understand that at some point when you see a child is not up to task in your lesson, just get to understand. But the good thing with absent seizure is at some point these children outgrow the condition. But it is always an alarming thing to take good look at it before it can escalate to a generalized seizure.
Nick, do you climb anything other than
my car and maybe bumps on Dennis Street Road? I need to live a little bit more.
No, you do. I would actually encourage you come back with some energy, some strength that you've never had before.
And a different approach to life also, like you said.
Completely. The way I communicate now with my friends and people, and they're like, I don't know, something really happened up there.
I can't believe there's only one epileptologist in Kenya. One practicing one. One.
He must be very busy, eh?
He is.
Good Lord. And
Because
1.5 million
people. Yeah. So I have actually opted to do expeditions after every 2 years. Yeah. So one in 2018, that was the walk. 2020, the cycling and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And now 2022.
What are you planning for 2022?
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Drums, please.
And it should get more challenging as you as you go by. So I'm doing a marathon. I'm doing the Boston Marathon.
Oh, very good.
In 2022, I'm doing the Boston Marathon.
Why Boston?
I don't know. I was just looking at, some of the prestigious marathons.
New York one is a big one.
It is.
Stanchard. Ndakaini.
Oh, you're not leading. You want to stay within.
Yes, is that local, then you go international.
I know, but
You
but,
guy, my guy.
but you see, this is how I have been describing it. Like when I did the work, it was more of a national cover for the epilepsy awareness journey, and Kilimanjaro, definitely that was to create awareness about epilepsy across Africa, because Kilimanjaro is iconic in Africa. Now on a global platform, I thought one of these prestigious marathons would really bring light to epilepsy. And I already have friends asking me, you've never run before? And I'm like, yes, but I've already signed up actually for my practices in one of the camps in Eldoret, and I'm moving there for 5 months in November. November is Epilepsy Awareness Month. Wow. So that's more or less the same time I'll be launching my bid for the marathon. Train for 5 months and, wait for the moment to come. And actually, I know I'll be one amongst, the elite runners. So I might not really pull something and say this is for epilepsy, but I'm planning to, once the gun goes off, I just want to sprint. I know people don't sprint in marathons, but just to create something that at the end of the day, will be outstanding, from all this group of people.
So you'll sprint for what, like a kilometer, then you give up? Because 2
And then
kilometers is a long journey to be sprinting.
I know it is. Yeah, but just for the moment, so that you stand out. I mean, I'm still figuring out how best it would come out for people to know this person is running because they want to create awareness about epilepsy.
Okay, just FYI, and I know this because I used to live there for many years.
Where?
New York City Marathon is actually the first Sunday in November. And you just said November is Epilepsy Month. So just think about it. Just think about
Okay,
it. It'll be a very
I
good,
think that's
be
a
a very
good thing
good
to
story.
think. That's
They'll be
something.
saying, oh, there's a man from Kenya. He's a
He's running
theology
to create
student.
awareness. He
yes,
isn't fit at all when he's run for 3 seconds and he's done. We're now aware.
He's climbed Kilimanjaro 3 times.
And
he walked all the way to Mombasa.
He's walked through the Savo and faced lions. They like to exaggerate. He killed a lion with his bare left hand and he's a right-handed gentleman.
Pastor Frederick.
And he also has a one-way ticket to heaven for 3 poor people who have come from his theology classes. What a man.
3 years ago was of a lady who got a seizure, and somebody took an advantage of that and they raped her.
Oh God.
It was crazy. I mean, we followed that case up, and because this person just did it and they ran away. The story came up because at the end of the day, the lady got pregnant and then realized that she had, contacted HIV.
Oh my God, that's sick.
That's that story.
Sick.
And that was purely from a person getting a seizure and in a strange place where they couldn't get help, and somebody took an advantage of that.
Frederick Beuchi, this incredible story, man. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, and well done for all the awareness that you've raised.
Yeah.
And we wish you all the very best as you embark on your next journey.
Yeah, sure. Maybe to just mention, so in all this epilepsy awareness journey, at the end of the day, this year, I was nominated for the International Golden Light Award by the International Bureau for Epilepsy.
What does that mean?
So that means it's given to a person who has, stood out to create awareness about epilepsy.
Did you get it or you were nominated?
It is here.
Oh, look at that.
It is
International Golden Light Award.
It was about 2 weeks ago in Paris. This is the award.
And you went there physically or they sent it to you?
They sent this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well done. International Bureau for Epilepsy. International Golden Light Award at the 34th International Epilepsy Congress 2021 to recognize the personal contribution Frederick has made in his epilepsy community. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well done, Frederick.
Yeah. So,
Pastor Frederick, shining a golden light, no doubt.
Yes. So this
have you learned how to do miracles yet at your theology school?
That's not a subject in theology, really.
Oh, okay.
That's your own personal
You just wake up and decide
relationship.
receive, and then now. Okay.
Well done.